Hey, this morning we are starting a new sermon series. Last week we had Easter Sunday, obviously, and we talked about how Jesus lived so that we have the opportunity to truly live in our lives as well. Through the life, through the death, through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, He has given us the ability to move onward in our lives, to actually have a new path in our life where we can put our past behind us and pursue something new. So for the next several weeks, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at that path that Jesus lays out, and it's found in what's known as the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is recorded in the book of Matthew, and in chapters 5 through 7. And this is really Jesus' I call it a stump speech as we get back into political season. I can't believe the new election's not a year and a half away. It's even more than that. And we're already hearing who's declaring for president and stuff like that. But when they start going around, they have a stump speech. Wherever they go, they kind of give the same general tone of their speech that tells you what their message is. The Sermon on the Mount is kind of Jesus' stump speech. It's his thing that wherever he goes around the countryside, kind of seems to be his familiar message that he's letting people know this is what I want to communicate to you so you know clearly what I'm trying to tell you about. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, here's what it says. It says, "One day he saw the crowds gathering. Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down." That's why it's called the Sermon on the Mount. He's on the side of a mountain. On the side of a mountainside and sat down. His disciples gathered around him, and he began to teach them. Now, before we talk about what he taught them, we first need to understand the audience he's speaking to. Because just like today I'm sitting here with you, there's a wide variety of people in his audience that he's speaking to. I'm going to narrow it down to about two different groups that are in his audience, okay? His first group that's in the audience would have been Jewish people. And what we know about Jewish people back in that time is three words would have described them, and those words are pride, rules, and entitlement, all right? Let me tell you why. They were prideful in this sense. They knew they were God's chosen people and you weren't. Okay, so unless we're going to assume, is anyone out here got Jewish heritage in here? No one. Okay, so we're all in group 2. We're all the Gentiles when you look at the scriptures, okay? But the Jews back in that time would have looked at all of us and went, we're God's chosen people and you're not. We're special, you're not. You're just losers, okay? You are secondary people that God doesn't even care about, but he really likes me because I'm a Jew. Okay, so they were very prideful people. The other word that describes them is rules. They had 613 rules that they lived by, that the Jewish priests had put together that you live by. So as Jews, you had 613 rules, and you lived your life according to these rules of what you do and what you don't do and how you make a decision here and how you don't make a decision there. And they were people dictated by rules in their life, and it controlled their lives was rules. The last way to describe them is entitled. They were entitled in this way. They felt because I'm chosen by God, because I live by these rules, I'm entitled to God letting me go to heaven because of who I am and what I've done. And so they were very entitled people in the sight of God, which was almost God owes me salvation. God owes me heaven because of who I am and what I've done. I'm entitled to heaven. And he owes me stuff, okay? Now, that group is still very alive and well in our world today. The way we would describe them is this. They are the religious people, all right? Religious people in our society are prideful, they're rule followers, and they're entitled, which is if you run into them, they will make it very well known that they're here and you're aware. Here. And they will make it known the reason they're here and you're here is because they follow all the rules correctly and you don't. And they will also let you know that they're entitled to special benefits in the church and church things because of what they do and who they are, and you're not those things, so they're entitled. All right? That group is still very prevalent in our culture today. The second group of people in Jesus' audience at the Sermon on the Mount, I would call the outsiders, which is everybody who's not a Jew. And they are described by three characteristics. 1, selfish. 2, worthless. 3, hopeless. You might be going, that's all of us you're describing. Well, yeah, okay. Let me explain how that is, okay? The first thing is they were selfish. The reason they were selfish is this. If you don't know God, what else do you have to live for? Yourself. Okay? So if you have no relationship with God, you are living for yourself. So they were just naturally selfish people because the only reason you make decisions is what benefits you when God's not involved in your life. The second thing is worthless. And they weren't truly worthless, but they felt worthless because they felt like because of who they are and what they had done, there is no way God wanted anything to do with them. And in God's eyes, they were just worthless pieces of junk sitting around the earth waiting to die. So they felt worthless. The last thing to describe them was hopeless, is they looked at their situation and went, there is nothing I can ever do to make God even like me. Because I'm not a Jew and because I haven't lived the right way, it's hopeless. I have no hope beyond this world because there's nothing I can do that God will ever, ever accept me. So they were selfish, worthless, and hopeless. And that crowd is still very prevalent in our world today. It's not hard to find those people. It's not hard to find that segment of our society. Now, both of these groups, they are following this man Jesus around the countryside because they want to hear him speak. Because what they've heard and what they've already heard from him are rumors is that he's different from all the other teachers anyone's ever heard before. Something is different from this guy. He's not the norm. He's not the religious guys. He's giving a different message. And what we see is this. He's begun to break down the misconceptions about God and who can actually have a relationship with him. That's what his message is. The Sermon on the Mount, the way he begins it, is he starts to outline this new path forward that anybody that desires to know God can know him. That is earth-shattering because up to this point, everyone thought just the Jews could know God. And Jesus starts throwing out this message going, no, anybody can know God, and I'm going to tell you how. And he starts ripping down the misconceptions both of these groups on the screen had, and he starts tearing them apart and going, I'm going to show you how you can move onward in your life to a new place, to a new path, to find real truth about who God is and what he wants from your life. That's the truth. That's the path we're going to be looking at the next several weeks, all right? Now, after he sits down, the first thing he does is he begins to redefine who it is that God looks favorably upon. What you will see is this is called the Beatitudes. And every one of these things in the Beatitudes starts with this line. It says, God blesses. All right? And what blessing was basically who God looks favorable upon. So God blesses you. He looks favorable upon you. And he starts redefining what that means and who can actually be blessed and who God actually looks favorably upon. Remember, the Jews go, it's only us. The outsiders go, it's never us. And Jesus starts to make this clear. He starts making this clear. He says, it's not what family you were born in that determines who God blesses. It's not how much money you have that determines who God blesses. It's not the decisions you are making that determines who God blesses. It's not the sins you've committed or the sins you haven't committed that determines who God blesses. What he makes very clear in this first statement is this. He looks at a person's heart. And that is the determining factor of who God decides to look favor upon, who God chooses to bless in their life. And he makes a very drastic point of going, it has nothing to do with these worldly things. It has everything to do with your heart and where your heart sits and what your heart desires. All right? So we're going to look at those heart issues now, looking through, as I said, it's called the Beatitudes, that the blessings that God says, these are the things, if you have these heart issues, God will bless you. God will look favorably upon you. Here's how it starts. It says, God blesses those who are poor in spirit and realize their need for him. Let me stop for a second and deal with this first one. The first thing he does is he makes the defining statement and goes, there has to be a defining point in your life where you decide to get on a new path and you plant your flag and go, I'm going different directions. You know this in life. If you are going to start a new path, there's always a defining moment to that new path. Say you want to lose weight. Anybody that's lost substantial weight before, you can look back and go, I remember the first day I woke up where I finally started that path. And you go, there was a defining moment where I changed who I was and what I was pursuing. And you know that day you planted that flag. If you ever got married and you are married or been married, you can remember back, before you get married, there has to be a day you propose. And you have to plant that flag and go, I'm going to change the rest of my path forward. I'm going to go a different direction, and I'm going to propose. If you've ever changed jobs, With a change in a job, you can remember the day you decided I'm going to send a resume out somewhere else. And you can remember that was the day where I planted the flag and went, I am making a change from where I am currently, and I'm going a new path. I'm going a new direction, okay? Jesus is laying that same thing out here as he's going, I need you to plant a flag in the ground and go a new direction, because you can't do any of these rest of these things we're going to talk about unless you're on this path. And the thing he says is God blesses those who are poor in spirit and realize their need for him. What that means is this: God looks favorably upon, God blesses those who realize the damage their sin has done in their relationship with God and how it separates them from God. And not just understands that, but then also understands they need him. They need Jesus. They need God to fix that relationship. The first major switch in the life is going where you come to a point that you realize, without God, I am lost. Without God, there is no victory. Without God, I am left with my sin, and there is no way out of this trap. The first place you plant your flag is where you finally realize, I understand that, and I am willing to run to him to find the solution. Now, in the scriptures, where we see that is we see four things involved with that in the scriptures. Typically, what we see is we see faith of who Jesus Christ is and belief in him, that he is the Son of God, that he did die for your sins, and that he has resurrected and he is alive and sits at the right hand of God. We see belief. We see repentance. What repentance is when you come to that point in your life, repentance is understanding my sin is what got me in trouble and I want to run away from it. And repenting is literally, it's a turning of your back to it and going a new path. We also see confession in the scriptures, which is confessing your allegiance to who? God, which is that plant flagging thing. I'm planting my flag and I am making a verbal confession before people going, I am a follower of Jesus Christ. The last thing we see in the scriptures is baptism. And we see with baptism that is the flag being put down, that's the changing point. That is where I now move this new direction in my life that you can always look back to and go, that was where my flag went down. And I can look back and go, that was the day I was baptized. I've seen that, and I've started this new path in my life. So Jesus here says, God blesses those who come to this point in their life, and he says, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And he says, those who come to that stage in their life, the kingdom of heaven is yours. He doesn't say, get to that point in your life, clean up all of your stuff, get everything in order, figure it all out. Once you get all that together, then we're cool, and now the kingdom of heaven is yours. He says, change your heart, let me change it right here, the kingdom of heaven is yours. That's how he starts it. And this is dependent on everything else he teaches, because if you don't plant that flag, the rest of this can't be accomplished. God can't look favorably upon you. All right? The next thing he says this, God blesses those who mourn. Now, there's lots of ways to interpret this. So I have to admit, as a minister who's studying the scripture, I have to look at it and go, what do I feel God's leading me of what that means? And I will be freely admitting this. That view's changed in me multiple different times because it just says God blesses those who mourn. You can take that several ways. Here's where I was this week, is how I see the mourning thing. When you plant that flag and you start a new path in your life and you realize the significance and the damage sin does to people, you start to look at this world differently. You start to look at this world and you see the damage done to people and you see the separation between them and God. And if you truly appreciate that and understand it, it breaks your heart. And for the first time in your life, people aren't just people. People are people that don't know Jesus Christ, and you mourn. It starts to break your heart. And so I looked at it and went, God blesses those who mourn. Yeah, he does. And then he says, and they will be comforted. Let me tell you how it comforts me knowing Jesus Christ, because I know there's hope. There's hope for those broken people I see. There's hope for a lost world all around me. And even though I mourn, I'm not hopeless. I'm comforted by the fact that I know that someday me as an individual will get to spend eternity with my Father in heaven. But at the same time, there's hope that others can find him as well. So even though I mourn, God comforts me, and God will bless me because I mourn. The next thing he goes on, he said, God blesses those who are humble. Okay, the next thing we see representative of a heart for God is humble, that you have humility. There's a couple ways this plays out. Number one, Jesus will preach this message time and time again. He will show it in his own lifestyle and in his words, which is this: you are to be a servant. If you are a follower of Jesus Christ, you are to be a servant of his, which means you serve everybody that's around you. You have humility, and you think of other people as better than yourself, and you are here to serve them. That is what followers of Christ are to do. You are to have humility in regards to other people. The other key is this: in order to point out sin in other people's lives and the fact that they need God, if you want to do it effectively, you better be humble. All right? If you think the best means of witnessing to people and trying to bring them to God is to go before them, and the minute they strike in conversation with you, they can tell that you feel you're up here and they're like little peons who need all of your information. Is that real effective? Been there before? Have you had someone come to you that way before? Okay, it's offensive, is it not? True humility lets you go before people and go, I am not here to beat you up. I'm not here to point things out to make you feel bad. I'm here because I love you. And I want to let you know how I found God, and I want to help lead you to know God as well, because it's changed my life. It's not you need to change all this about you right now and get all this fixed up and everything else because I need you to look like I want you to look. It's about, I want you to know Jesus Christ like I know Jesus Christ, and having a humble opinion of yourself, of going, I'm no better than you. I had a lot of issues too, and I still have a lot of issues, but I know God can fix them. All right? And then he says, the blessing of that is, for they will inherit the whole earth. And you might go, what does that mean? What it means to me is this: in heaven, the people that are humble will be the leaders. Jesus says this time and time again. Those who are least now will be what? Greatest then. And those who are greatest now will be what? Least then. All right? The people who are humble, God blesses, and that they will inherit the whole earth. He goes on, he said, God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice. Meaning this: you hunger and thirst. You desire to see right and truth win out in the day. That you have a desire instinctively in you that flows from your heart that wants to see justice in the world. You want to see the right thing happen. You want to see truth prevail. And that is the heartbeat of that beats in your chest, is you want to see justice happen. And he says the reward is this: for they will be satisfied. Why will they be satisfied? I can tell you it's not because you're going to see it here all the time. All right? All you have to do is read the papers for like 5 minutes and you will find out justice doesn't always happen in our world. All you have to do is live here for 5 years and you will have multiple examples in your own life that justice doesn't always win out in this world. Where you will be satisfied is this: someday you will get to go to heaven and you will see that God will bring justice and perfect justice to everything. And you will find that you will be satisfied by that you will no longer be longing for justice, because God will satisfy your desire to see that. All right? The next thing he says, God blesses those who are merciful. Now, merciful, what does that mean as well? God blesses those who are merciful. I describe it like this: God blesses those who are willing to forgive other people. God blesses those who are willing to look at people's circumstances to try to find out why they are the way they are, rather than just getting upset with them. This is a hard quality to get in our hearts. As humans, we like to just look at people and see how they directly influence us and how they relate to us, and get upset or happy with them based on that. Where mercy plays a role is this: you can look at someone that's horribly offensive to you and still have mercy on them, because you can go, if I would know their backstory, I would probably be able to figure out why they are that way. Most of the time when people are mean and cruel to us, how do we feel about them? Good or bad? Bad, right? We get angry. We get ticked off. One of the things God can do in your heart, one of the things God can do in your life, is he can drastically eliminate that anger you have towards other people and the anger you hold on to provide forgiveness and to take the time to go, you know what? If I knew their backstory, it would probably explain a lot of what I'm seeing right now in the current day. That is mercy. That is being a person that has a heart of mercy. And he says this: for they will be shown mercy. Another common message of Jesus: if you forgive others, I'll forgive you. If you don't forgive others, I won't forgive you. God says, you show mercy and I will show you mercy. And every one of us in here, if you are a believer in Jesus Christ, and if you're not one, just as much, you know how much you want God to show you mercy, right? You do. Other than Tammy, who's perfect. So, I mean, Tammy, you don't need mercy because you're just, no. And I know you can't yell at me right now, so I can just say that and I can just go on and you can't do anything about it. So you'll have to catch me after service. But anyways, we all want mercy the same way that God expects us to grant it out to other people. We want God to go, I can see you for your background story and I can still love you and I can provide you forgiveness in spite of who you are and the affront that you are to me. I will provide you mercy. The next thing he says, God blesses those whose hearts are pure. So then he goes on, he starts laying out all these things. Then he says, God blesses those whose hearts are pure. Let me tell you what hearts are pure is this. Your motivations for why you do what you do are pure. Your motivation for why you do these other traits is not to get in good with God. It's not to earn your credits like the Jews thought and put my checklist in there that God will go, oh, you have a lot of good stuff. You're really good. Come on in. Genuine motivation is this. I love God and I love people. That's why I treat people the way I do. I have no other intention behind it. There's no intention to benefit myself. There's no intention to benefit anyone else. There's no intention to benefit another organization. I am here strictly to benefit you and be a favor to you. That is a pure of heart. That is pure motivation, which is I love God, therefore I love people. And the reason I share these things and treat you this way is because of those things, not because I'm hoping to get something out of it. And that is what a pure heart is. And he goes on and he says, for they will see God. Let me tell you why I think he says this, for they will see God. When you get to that point in your life and your walk with Jesus Christ, it's where you really start to see God do things in your life on a daily basis. You see God regularly. Those of you that are here, you see God on a daily basis. You see him interacting constantly with what's happening in your day-to-day walk and life. And when you get a pure heart with pure motivations, it's much easier to start seeing God and what he's doing around you. And that's what I think that means there. The next thing he says is God blesses those who work for peace. So next thing he says, God blesses those who work for peace. Peace two ways. Peace between two people and peace between people and God. And what we are here is we get this message from Paul. We are to proclaim, we are to be the messengers of God of reconciliation. We are to be the people in this world who help people bridge their differences and their issues. And that's who God calls us to be. We are to reconcile people and people and God. And we have the message to reconcile people to God. And we have the ability, because of some of these other things he's already laid out, to help people reconcile issues with themselves. So we are to be those people who are reconciling relationships constantly, not causing them to divide and not causing them to become a bigger issue. We are to be reconcilers. And then he says this, for they will be called children of God. Those of us who become reconcilers, those of us who are people that work for peace between peoples and people and God, people start to label you and you go, that's a person, God. And to be honest, as a Christian, that's the greatest title I could ever have, is if people looked at me and went, I don't even know this guy, that's a godly person. Those of you that can identify someone in your life that you know is a godly person, I bet you one of the main reasons for that is they're peacemakers. They are people that have found ways to bring peace in your life between you and God and peace with other people and move to a new place in your life. And so you look at them and you label them people of God. And that's what God says here is what will happen. Finally, he closes with this. He said, God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right. And he says, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. But then he goes on in this one. He said, God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Be happy about it. Be very glad, for a great reward awaits you in heaven. And remember, the ancient prophets were persecuted in the same way. So last thing he brings up is this. Be happy when you're persecuted. People are going to lie about you. People are going to slander you. People are going to try to hurt you. You will be persecuted, but be happy about it because great is your reward in heaven. Now, you look at that list that we've gone through and you would go, this was my first thought, who would ever try to hurt those people? Right? That's why you look at it and go, why would anyone ever, if someone truly was living those things out in their life, Why would anyone try to hurt them? That doesn't even make sense. Why would he even give this warning? And what I would tell you is he gives the example of going, what did they do to Jesus? They killed him. He lived all those things out perfectly, and they killed him. Sometimes I think we get caught thinking if we live these things out, everything will go great in our lives and everybody will love us. And when we are our most effective as Christians is when the whole world loves us. Jesus' illustration goes, no, when you're most effective, a lot of people hate you to the point that they want to kill you. And I'm not saying, hopefully none of us are in that situation, but I can tell you this. There are thousands of Christians weekly right now in the Middle East who are followers of Jesus Christ who are being slaughtered for their faith. Last week was the school shooting? Was that one? I think it was. I don't think it was the week before. Last week was a school shooting over there. 149 students went into a college campus, pulled out the kids. Are you a Christian or not? Everyone said a Christian, bullet in the head. 149 of them. There's pictures on the internet. You can see all the bodies. I mean, it's graphic. 149. That's a small sample of what's happening in the Middle East right now because of people's allegiance to Jesus Christ. Persecution will happen. Let me tell you why you will be persecuted if you are a follower of Christ and you plant your flag and you start walking this new path that God says, onward with me. The religious people, they will attack you and they will hate you because you are walking outside their boundaries. That's what happened to Jesus. You aren't living and doing the things that they think you should do based on their rules. There's 613 rules. You're actually trying to be the person God calls you to be and follow his spirit. And the religious people will look at you and they will hate you because they will go, you're not walking within our boundaries. And it doesn't matter if you think you're walking within God's, you're not walking within ours. And our boundaries mean more than God's. And we don't like you anymore. All right? On the other side, the outsiders will hate you and they will attack you because they are easily swayed and manipulated. If you believe, as a Christian should, that there is a God and there is Satan, who is his enemy, that works in this world, Satan will convince and sway and manipulate people to hate you for no good reason. And people who do not know God are very easily swayed and manipulated because they have no foundation to work from. They have no filter to filter anything through. So you can easily sway and manipulate people that live with that mindset. So even though the crowds didn't really know Jesus or have any real reason to hate Jesus, do you remember what happened? How is it they start chanting, crucify him? Did they just go, I hate this guy, and I'm going to start chanting, crucify him? No. It's some of the religious leaders started up, and once they started up and they get enough core people, everyone just kind of joins in with the crowd and goes, oh, yeah, crucify the guy. Give us Barabbas. Crucify him, crucify him. Why? They were easily swayed. They were easily manipulated. Our culture is the same way. The outsiders are easily swayed and manipulated. And what they do is they take Christians who wear the title that don't have the heart, and they label all of us with them. So we could easily take a group we would know, Westboro Baptist, is it Westboro Baptist Church? Okay? This is how the world does this. They take a group like that, who none of us would have a fun time with, and if they walked in here, we would have a rough time with. Okay? Let's just be honest. Most of us would want to go picket them wherever they go picket other things because they are not representing Jesus Christ. But our world and the enemy against us will take them and put them on TV and go, that's what Christians are. That's what Christians are. That's what Christians are. And we would sit here in this church building and go, that's not me. That's not my heart. I would never be that. That's not how I think. That's not what I think God believes. But the fact is, they see the media and they don't know you. And they're easily swayed and manipulated. So they will hate you, not because there's any reason for it, because they know you personally, but because they have been manipulated. So you will suffer persecution. But if you love God and if you love people, persecution will never stop you from representing Jesus Christ for this reason. You know what's at stake, and you know that you will be blessed. You know that God will look upon favor upon your life when you stand for him. So Jesus sets a tone for a new path forward for our lives. What he does is he provides us truth about who and how we can have a relationship with God and truly be blessed in our lives. But to experience that life, we have to be willing to move onward with God in our lives and leave our misconceptions behind. And if we're willing to move onward on that new path, we can experience a blessed life a life where we know God looks upon favor upon us because we're on the path with God. Would you pray with me?